Today on Top Gear Rearview, Brady gets all giddy.
Hello and welcome to Top Gear Rearview. I'm Jeff. That's Brady. Tonight we're looking back at Series 3, Episode 8 of the new Top Gear.
This episode aired on the 21st of December in 2003, and the star in a reasonably priced car was Johnny Vegas.
And we got an interesting episode. We got a couple old cars, couple not cars. But anyway, we start things off with a Mercedes 280 SL from the mid-60s. Move into a Nissan Micra comparison test with a businessman's 737, the Boeing variety. The Aston Martin Lagonda, another mid-70s car. Rounding things off with our power lap for the individual car reviews, the Audi TT, and we close out the episode with an actually pretty entertaining challenge of the Generation game.
That is a great challenge. I can't wait to talk about it. I don't remember this episode. I'm sure I've seen it, but I was extremely interested at the results of every single one of those races, so I can't wait to talk about it. Yeah,
they were legitimately there were some that were no, but some that were wow, that was way closer than I'd expect. So we will get to that. Let's start things off with this relatively beautiful Mercedes 280 SL.
It is quite pretty. Did you get a name? Sorry, not a name. Did you get a year on the particular one he was driving around?
I believe he was in a 66.
Ooh, that is really... He started the segment off, or I guess the episode off, talking about... He said...
Hello and welcome to another one of Top Gear's crummy charts.
Mm-hmm.
He had the decades underneath and then the cars, and he was mentioning how in the 40s and 50s cars all looked the same and they're all garbage.
Yeah.
And the 60s come around and all the cars were beautiful, and then the 70s a little less, and then 80s and the 90s, and now they all look like garbage again, he said.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure I 100% agree with. I guess maybe I'm thinking later on, but there's a lot of cars that are starting to look really good again.
Yeah, I think styling's coming back around, but man, the 60s I think is universally agreed to be a very good time for automotive styling.
It's pretty good. So that makes sense that he's driving around a 60s SL, but it is very pretty. It's simple, understated.
Yeah, the simplicity I really liked. He was like, there's not a lot to break. You can get a crappy one for about $15,000, but if you need to fix it, they still make all the parts, and an engine rebuild's like $4,000.
A full engine rebuild, like every part in it. Well, it's interesting they said they still make the parts. I mean, I'm pretty sure that when I see an old Mercedes like this, the first thing I think of is like some African warlord. I bet there's probably a pretty big market for those cars and parts in Africa.
Yeah. Well, they just made them better too. I mean, you might be on a lot of original parts because everything's so overbuilt. Like he said, the quote that surprised me was the 20 kilograms of paint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a lot or not. I think it's a lot,
I think
right?
That's a ton. Like, I wish he had it in mils, because I know, typical good paint's like 6 mil or so. But, I gotta imagine. That sounds like a ton of paint.
Yeah. You just buff it for days.
Yeah. If it starts getting hazy on you, just take a coat off.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 280 SL, so it's got a 2.8 liter, 170 horsepower. He sounded surprised that it got 65 while he was on the motorway, he said, but it doesn't look like it's not a highway cruiser or even a Grand Tour. It's just a fun little runabout, yeah. It's
actually meant to be more of a Grand Tour, and I'm a total liar. They didn't actually make a 66 280 SL. That didn't come around until 67, so it must have been a later 60s model. But
okay.
But yeah, it's they said it kind of this is the W113 chassis, and it evolved from sort of a sportier car into more of a Grand Tourer. He said most of the U.S. models were a 4-speed with aircon. Was he in an auto or a manual? I don't recall.
I believe his was an automatic.
Okay, yeah, that's I think
it said it on the back.
Yeah, the manuals are pretty elusive. It was an option, but they only made 882 manuals.
Really? Of the SL or all of the W113?
Of the 280 SL.
Okay.
They made a total of so basically they made about 23,000 automatics and 880 manuals. So
it's interesting that at that point in time the automatic was not the option. That the automatic was more of the standard.
Was the default. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. But so this was the 2.8 liter as the 280 would imply, and putting out a fairly mellow, 170 horsepower. But I mean, it wasn't light, it wasn't heavy. It was about 3,000 pounds.
I mean, the reason I said it was more of a runabout, it looks like a little roadster.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that big, and with Jeremy in it, I mean, it looked a little smaller, but, you know, compared to, I guess, the roadsters at the time in the 60s, like your midgets and your other type of cars.
Yeah.
This thing was, quite a grand tour size.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just all around, I think, a good car. This one had mechanical fuel injection, too, which we've just talked about in the past, and how it's engineering nerdery that neither one of us might really want to own. But
I'd like to think about it, though.
Yeah.
I was looking through the list of changes over the life. I guess it ran from 67 to 70, this particular 113 before it was replaced. And the model changes that they made to it were interesting. The last model change, which was made in November of 1970, is it went instead of a satin black paint over brass for a coolant expansion tank, they went with an opaque beige plastic. That was the entire model change.
It's I mean, that's a big change, Brady.
And there's another thing here that maybe leads a little bit more. The 5-speed ZF 5-speed manual transmission was discontinued in '69. So not only was it an option, but it was only an option for 2 years.
Yeah, you can still get it on special request, but it was a limited one. So there were some notable owners, and I recall two. It was Kate Moss and Colin Powell, and we don't remember who the third is. But there was one that they left off the list that I was a little bummed, because John Travolta has one of these. Sorry, had one. It was stolen in September of 2011.
Oh my God. Come look at this car. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was stolen in September of 2011.
That's what I read.
Brutal.
Yeah, bummer. I don't know if it was ever recovered. Let's see.
The insurance money was recovered.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's see. Now I gotta pull the article up real quick here.
Oh, Jeff, I don't care.
I'm following up. I'm following this thing to some conclusion. This was when he was big for the taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. If you remember that movie.
Oh yeah, okay.
Middle of the day, parking spot in Berkeley Street. Somebody stole it.
He just left the keys in it.
I guess so.
Where's my keys? Oh my God!
It doesn't say if it was recovered or not. So, Mr. Travolta, if you're listening, you would think you have better things to do with your time. But I hope you got your car back.
Jeremy says, let's get back on topic here.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy says that
They just want something reliable, something charismatic, something a little bit elegant, and I absolutely understand that.
I think I would call this car extremely elegant.
I don't know about extremely. I mean, it's not like, especially compared to, given this is a ridiculous one, but the Lagonda, like that interior was such a just gaudy elegance. This one is understated, and I think a little bit of elegance is about right.
No, I think the understatedness makes it extremely elegant. It looks like Audrey Hepburn would be stepping out of it, you know?
All right. Or Kate Moss.
Or Kate Moss. You made the comparison, I did not.
Not John Travolta, though.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's about all I got. I don't remember any other quotes, but it was a nice looking car. It was the subject of, or the kind of intro to this was he has to drive by this dealership every day, and they had some nice looking cars in there, and this was one of the better looking ones.
We'll come back around to what we started with, Jeff, is that the zenith of car design was 1966, according to Jeremy. From what I heard from you, it kind of sounds like you agree. Do you agree?
I think I mean
66 when the Mira came out.
Yeah, you got so much happening across the globe. You got the Mira. They had there was another one in there that I can't remember what he said. I think it was the Ferraris of the time. That'd be around the time of the Daytona, if I remember correctly. But then in the States, you got the Mustang, and you got like the GTO and the Camaro and all these awesome muscle cars, and they're very distinctly different, but like both have seriously held the test of time.
Yeah, even like the mundane cars, maybe I'm thinking maybe just because they're muscle cars, but like the Galaxy and stuff like that are just really distinct and unique and pretty.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was just like crazier or more risk-taking manufacturers that were just like, whatever, do it. But there's a lot really any kind of automotive taste in terms of visuals, like you can find something that kind of fits in that time frame.
Mm-hmm. Even the trucks look good back in the 60s.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the Fords start to get boring at that point, but like the Chevys
Bronco was
and
still
the
out.
Dodge.
The Bronco just came out. In
True.
66?
You got that one. That's a good looking
Yeah.
one. I mean, I think their truck design peaked in the 50s, but yeah, the Bronco is not a bad car or truck.
All right, I would tend to agree as well. It's very pretty cars around there, and even low range models, bottom of the range, they still look good.
Yeah. So on to the news, I suppose.
On to the news.
On to the news. You want to talk about some exhausts?
Let's talk about first, Jeff. I found it interesting. They started the news off with an apology because the BBC changed their time. And I remember distinctly, I don't remember what episode or when it was, but distinctly they talk about later on, once they said we had to change our time again. But besides that, I don't think they've changed their time their entire run because it soon becomes the BBC's most popular show.
Yeah,
I found it interesting that they just spur of the moment changed the time on a show.
They didn't even tell them.
They didn't even tell the personalities. Oh, we had to change you from 8 till 7, and it's like, you need to tell me these things. I found that interesting because you don't just move things around like that,
No.
We could talk about some exhaust, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had written down for most of this. Because it was just, the Mustang at least. The Mustang with the stacks, that was a Fox body, and I was like, yeah, I can get behind that. It's dumb, but it's so American.
Really
That's
dumb.
so Florida, man.
Man, the aerodynamic torque put on where the bottom of those stacks meet the pipes, because those are big. They had the big diffusers on them, too.
Yeah. Those were proper semi-salvage star stacks. Those were gigantic. I'm sure it was a V6 too.
Yeah.
And the what looked to be just a jet engine in that Princess, I believe they called it. I could not identify the car, but it sure looked like a jet engine.
It absolutely is a jet engine. Yeah, they did call it a Princess. Hammond commented that he'd like to...
If it was me, I'd rather have just fitted a saddle and reins to the jet engine and fired that off down the road. It'd be better. That's rubbish.
To which I commented, "Oh, no, you wouldn't, Richard. No, you wouldn't."
Now, flash forward a bit. This is going to go bad for you.
The foreshadowing. I'd also like to point out that they showed a picture of the Peugeot 407, the new 407 that's replacing the 406.
Yep.
And Hammond gives us one of his patented face car grill impressions.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I don't know if is that the first one?
It might not be, but it's one of it's the first I can remember. But I think he might have done something in maybe late Series 1 or something. But
maybe the Mini.
Yeah.
Sure.
They also had a picture of a Volvo that I wrote down Photoshop because I was like, for sure that's a Photoshop. It was super grainy. It looked like just a horrible chop job. And I looked into it. That was definitely a real car, and it has gull wings. It's so chopped, undrivably chopped. But respect for, follow your vision, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the Nissan Micra, I suppose.
Oh yeah, this was the best challenge they've had in a while.
It wasn't a challenge, but it was a terrible review.
It was a comparison. It was it was not a good segment.
It was not. So the Nissan Micra is 9,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And Hammond decided that because it's 9,000 pounds, the comparison should be between it, a vehicle that you own and get to keep after you pay 9,000 pounds, and a Boeing BBJ-2 private jetliner that costs 9,000 pounds an hour to lease out.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy one of those too. It's just $38 million.
Just $38 million.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. They did bring this Micra was back in one of the subcompact challenges, and one of the things they noted that Hammond really hits on here is these things come fully loaded, even like the base models. They come with keyless entry and start, rain sensing wipers, CD, climate control, electric windows. It's just they stack this thing pretty well from the factory.
You forgot, he said it even comes with airbags.
4 of them.
I know.
Sweet. Yeah, I think he said the risks were, or the looks were a little risky too. Which
a bit risky.
I do agree with.
Which is a nice way of saying it's pretty ugly.
It looked like a frog.
That's pretty bad. I don't like the way the Micras look at all. He commented that he was in the car that he was surprised by the build quality and how good it was. And I guess it goes to show you how little you can really take from the review of a car where they have it for a day or a half a day or something like that. Because whenever anyone says that the interior build quality on a Nissan is good, I go, probably not.
Yeah.
No,
I've
that's a
owned
lie.
one. It was garbage.
It was garbage. My family had one. It was awful.
Yeah, hot mess.
The engine, great. Suspension, everything, fine. Drivetrain, interior, just dumpster fire. Turns out, terrible build quality.
True. They do kind of flash back at the end of that yeah, they've already had complaints on build quality issues. About that engine, though, I found one they made for at least a prototype that they played with for a few years, the Micra R, where they mid-mounted a VQ35 in it.
What?
3.5 liter V6 mid-mounted in that thing. So it's basically like an awesome Clio V6.
Yeah, it's like the Clio V6.
Yeah, but bulletproof. I think they put the SER Ultima gearbox in that one too. So it was like that had to be a fun car to drive. It went around to a couple press fleets and everybody was like, "This thing is awesome." So not remotely practical, but and obviously they never actually made it. But oof, that would be a fun one to get behind. Like when they made that the Juke R that was not the actual production model, when they put the GTR drivetrain in the Juke, and it was just a monster. Yeah.
Take a GTR and put the center of gravity way too high.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
There you go. I mean, it's like, I feel like Ford kind of does that, but then they're like, or no, well, even Dodge recently, they're like, screw it, let's just make it. Like, let's just make the Demon. Sure. And if Nissan, like, had some drunk guy behind the helm who was just like, that's a cool car, build it. And then they were like, whoa, okay.
How many of these would it take to pay off our investment on it research? 30? Oh, hell yeah, we could sell 30 of these.
Yeah, I would, if it was a sub 40K Nissan Micra with a mid-mounted VQ, I might consider it, at least used.
Sub 40K used?
Probably sub 20 used.
Yeah. You know whoever buys that car is not going to treat it very nice.
Oh,
because
no.
You're going to buy that car and you're not going to treat it very nice.
Yeah. You don't want to be the third owner on that.
No.
So real quick, the 737, we have to touch on it, I guess. It can go 540 miles an hour. It has TVs and stuff. It actually costs $10 per mile to run one of those, which, I mean, seems both reasonable and unreasonable.
Yeah. I mean, it's a f***ing airplane. $10 a mile?
$10 a mile.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, apparently.
It's got two engines. It's only $5 an engine.
That's true. That's true. They have, I mean, there's like your G6 and whatnot, and Gulfstreams, and those are the ones that they're a little cheaper to operate because they're not a 737. So.
All right, we're putting it off, Jeff, but I guess we got to talk about Johnny Vegas now.
Yeah. He was not unfunny, but he was kind of hard to understand.
I have my share of experience trying to understand people who are hard to understand, mainly Scottish people from Petrolhead, and Johnny Vegas throws me for a loop every time. He mumbles and slurs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what, Jeff? He mumbled and slurred this time, too.
This whole time. He got some jokes that I heard, like he was talking about how he is like slowly devolving the human species, and like they'll dig him up in 20,000 years and be like, that's where they turned around. Which I laughed at that.
Yeah.
And he had an interesting driving style, presumably, I really assume because he doesn't have a driver's license.
Which is ballsy. I think there's someone else later on that doesn't have one.
Yeah.
But the worst we've had so far is an American who hasn't driven on the left side of the road.
Yeah. I was super impressed that he went for the stick. I kind of assumed he'd be in an auto.
Did they have an option?
I don't remember. I thought they always did, but I feel like we've seen one already in like previous episodes that they used the auto.
Oh, I don't remember that at all because I would have put Starsky in the auto.
But didn't he break true transmissions?
Well, yeah, I guess they had to resort to the auto.
There you go. Yeah, they had some good clips of him, coming into corners a little hot. Just gonna send it.
Another day, another beer. Just gonna send it.
Sometimes going wildly off course, and
he had no sense of feeling the car let go. Like,
yeah,
he'd be going as fast as humanly possible. It's like Mario Kart. Like, you just don't let off the gas at all.
Yeah.
And you just turn and hope for the best. Because there's no consequences, except for this is real life Johnny Vegas. There's like cameramen with children out there.
The general technique in autocross is you should always be on either the brake or the gas, but not like floored on either. And I feel like that's what he heard that advice and he was like, okay, I'm either stomping on one or stomping on the other.
Yeah.
But anyway, unsurprisingly, lap time was not that fast. It looked, heroic, and very squealy.
So we've recently talked about like Simon Cowell and some other people who are squealing the tires a lot, but on the edge of like tire capability.
Yeah.
Johnny Vegas was squealing the tires a lot because he really wanted that thing to go different direction than he was actually traveling.
Yeah. They were not squealing and like about to break. They were in full on protest. Like, we broke a while ago.
They were screaming in fear of where they were headed. That being said, Mr. Vegas did a 158.6. Just better than two other people.
And better than I expected.
Yeah, me too.
So
I guess he was going fast the whole time.
yeah, just not always in the right direction.
Just not always that controlled.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to this crazy Aston, because this is, I believe I've already, referenced this a few times in previous episodes, so it's good that we finally get to see this awesome Lagonda.
We have mentioned it a few times as we are looking back at all of the Astons and which one was the worst looking compared to the DB7. And I said, it's probably the DB7. And he said, well, what about the Lagonda? And I look it up and I go, oh, never mind.
I don't look at them regularly, and then I'll revisit them for reasons like this, where every few months and be like, oh, holy God, that's a bad looking car.
It was a brave choice. Hammond says that the Micra was a risky design choice.
Yeah.
The Lagonda was a risky design choice. I found it extremely interesting that at the beginning of the review, May said that the whoever the designer was, I don't remember his name, was obsessed with aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, then why'd you make everything flat and square, you dumb son of a bitch?
Yeah, curve some stuff, man.
Give us some sort of eased corners or something.
Yeah.
The back half of this thing looks like a Buick Century.
It does. Yeah, from the back, I think it'd be hard to recognize until you came around front and you're like, what is happening? Who stepped? Oh, it's the Lagonda. Okay. I was reading Car and Driver today, and they were talking about the lengths that manufacturers have to go to now to really to meet the pedestrian crash standards.
With the low nose.
The low, yeah, so it's got to be high enough that like it both cushions any impact from like directly like smushing the hood down onto the engine block, so you're not just like banging your head on an engine block through a hood,
which I'm sure you would do in this Lagonda.
Oh God, this thing would just chop you off at the knees and probably you'd go cartwheeling comically high,
spraying blood, Tarantino style.
This would be like 80s gore level blood.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so bad. Very, very interesting vehicle all around, though. It was a car. It's started out with carburation, and it had a hard time braking 10 miles per gallon.
Oh.
Yeah. 5.3 liter V8. Some of the later ones they put a 7 liter in it, which was kind of awesome. But this one had 280 horsepower, with a 0 to 60, a little conservative of 8.8 seconds.
It's not really a supercar, though, is it?
No, it's kind of big.
Top speed 140. It's certainly supposed to be plush inside. It's a little gaudy, as you said earlier.
Yeah, it did look comfortable. And it was the first one with LED gauges, or electronic gauges. A lot of touch buttons. I found it really funny. They did this in a few series. They had 4 series. There were very few series 1, a lot of 2, 3, and 4. And in Series 3, they switched from LED to CRT, cathode ray tube lighting. And they said it was even less reliable, surprisingly enough.
Oh, my God.
It's just so funny.
Yeah, I guess going on to the electronics thing, that seems like, despite its looks, which they didn't really put down at all. They just called it brave, I think.
Which it was. I mean, I also would call it god-ass ugly. But,
it's just bad. The electronics were its biggest shortcoming. The engine was fine, but the 5.3 liter Lagonda V8 I think was actually in that previous Aston we talked about a few episodes ago. It actually even said Lagonda on it.
Yeah, that was the what one was that? I don't even remember. It was one of
It was the V8
the V8 Vantage.
Vantage. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so they just swiped it right out of this one.
Yeah, but the electronics were really the shortcoming of this car. Not only in reliability, of which they were completely unreliable, but in the development of the car. I could scarcely believe the electronic developments. So all of these fancy gauges and push buttons and crap.
The development costs for the electronics alone on the Lagonda came to 4 times as much as the budget for the whole car. And when the first Lagonda was delivered, it was over a year late and completely undrivable.
Yeah, that is just
What an unbelievable overrun.
Yeah.
How many people were fired because of that? Because it should have been everybody.
Yeah, it should have just, I mean, that should have been the end of Aston Martin right there. They should have been like, well, calling it, boys. Shut her down. See you at the pub.
Yeah, but check out these buttons.
Yeah, they don't work.
They don't work at all.
Brett, I just sent you a link I want you to take a look at there. That is the 1998 modified. I think it was actually an 87 that they modified into a shooting brake. They only made one of them. I cannot decide how I feel about this car.
What is going on with these body lines? They're so
It's
terrible.
so confusing. But I'm like, I'm a wagon guy, and this one I can kind of. I don't know.
It's because you can't see the front.
I know.
This is great. Make sure you guys check this out in the show
I'll
notes.
throw it in the show notes. It's
a shooting brake Lagonda.
Oh,
it's awful, Jeff.
it's heaven and hell in one package. It was made by a Swiss company called Ruse Engineering, and yeah, they only made one.
It looks like they just followed the trunk line for the bottom of those windows, and it doesn't match. Everything else is so straight, and then it's like, let's put this curvy line in here because this car has no curves anywhere.
Yeah, it looks like the back is melting a little bit.
Sagging under its own weight. This car cost $50K when it was built in 76. That's $180K today. So it's pretty similar on to where you would have probably one of the top end, not the exotic Aston Martins, but the top end Aston Martins are probably like $180K. I guess you said today as in 2003. So it's an expensive car for sure.
Yeah, it always was. It was kind of it seemed like it was sort of their moonshot and to try to like save the company, which amazingly worked. I mean, between this and the V8 Vantage, which I'm sure was actually more like, oh, this is not just terrible.
They made 645 in 12 years. They made 50 a year. That's not saving anybody.
No, but it was. I guess maybe it was enough to just stir up. They said that a lot of the cash to keep them going was deposits on Lagondas.
645 in 12 years makes Lamborghini look like it was run by Henry Ford.
Yeah, it's Aston. Aston's weird, but
you can buy one today for $15K.
Yeah, I don't. Just don't. Nothing's gonna work, and
not a single bit of it's gonna work. You could probably turn around and sell that engine for about 10, so you're only losing $5K.
Yeah. You got to keep all those bitchin' CRT tubes.
Oh, man. I have to bring up one thing. Right at the very beginning, they compared this to Sir Ranulph Fiennes, who is the Arctic explorer in which they get their Arctic training later on in, I believe, season 10 or 11 for their journey to the North Pole. Mr. Ranulph Fiennes with his many missing fingers.
Yeah. They'll fall off on you.
This leads us, Jeff, into a add-on classic car segment, which is the classic or crock wall, which I don't know how long it lasts. I don't remember it too much, but this is already like the second or third time we've seen it.
Yeah.
But they went through... this is where they determine if a current car is going to be a future classic, like the Lagonda turned out to not be a future classic, because you bought one for $50K and now you can buy one today for $15K, and that's not adjusted for inflation.
No, the three characteristics of which a classic has to have two are rare, interesting, and beautiful. You know, the Lagonda should fit it because it's rare and it's interesting. It is. Maybe it's just so not beautiful that it cancels one of the other ones.
Well, I think they're probably missing a category which is not a complete pain in your ass to own and operate. Like,
true. There's got to be
this
some
thing-
level of ownability.
There's an upfront cost for the car, and then another, like they talked about, it's like you need another $15K to fix the electronics, and then you need another $15K to rebuild the engine, you need another $15K. So it's not really $15,000 to buy it. It's really like $60,000 or $70,000 to buy it, at which point you're not going to get your return on money.
God, I wonder, like, with a Lagonda, if since LED and, like, touch panel technology has come so far and is so cheap now, if you could just totally gut the thing, redo all the electronics, and, like, come out not that bad.
Just a couple iPads in there.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's go through the 5 cars real quick, Jeff,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about one question I have for you and
Yes, sir.
and the listeners. They talk about 5 cars, try to figure out if they're Crocs or classics. I have them all written down. They started with the Mazda MX-5, which I immediately was thinking, no way that's a classic, because it's just, there's too many of them. Way too
It's not
rare.
agreed. But I will say I took issue with the fact that they're like, oh, it's a Japanese version of a British sports car, and I was like, no, it's you can't claim small, light, and nimble as like a British thing. That's just how like cars work.
Well, then they didn't copy poorly built and pretty ugly.
Yeah.
So it's not all British, you know.
It's
So
true.
they called
It's
that
true.
one a Croc. I agree with that one. You're not
yeah,
you're not going to be
it's-
able to hold on to an early model MX-5 and resell it for a lot. They were just way too common. Someone
You
will just
can-
go buy another.
Yeah. You'll see them occasionally on like Bring a Trailer, like low mile examples, but they rarely top 10K. So it's like they're not appreciating at all.
No.
I mean, maybe they're holding, but yeah, they're just not rare. They are mildly interesting, and I don't think they're beautiful. I think they're fine looking, but they're not beautiful.
No, they're certainly not beautiful. All right, the next one is the Nissan Bluebird, which is a car I haven't heard anything about. I'm looking at one now. It looks pretty much, if you look at an older one, like my dad's old Maxima, but maybe a little smaller. They're specifically talking about like the more recent version, like the 90s version, I think.
Mm-hmm.
80s and 90s. Looks like a Maxima. Looks like an 80s or 90s Maxima.
Yeah.
They called that one a classic. I guess because it's
I can't remember their rationale was I honestly like the Bluebird quite a bit. It kind of is an early variant of some of the Skylines that'll come. Or not really, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
It has some bloodline to the Skyline name. But I don't think they're rare. And they're mildly interesting, but I wouldn't call them beautiful. I cannot remember why that one actually made it.
The older versions, like the 70s and 80s, 60s and 70s version of the Bluebird, I think maybe 60s, are way better than the 80s. I could definitely see, maybe they're just got the namesake carryover. The older Bluebirds look really nice.
I kind of like the 80s ones. I don't know. There's the ones, especially when they have the kind of fender mounted mirrors. I always love that look.
Yeah, those aren't the 80s ones. The 80s ones just
No.
look like a 1980s Maxima.
Box. Yeah, like the 710 series. That's a good looking one.
So the next one, Jeff, is the Peugeot 405 Mi16. Which, okay, sure, whatever. I guess it's kind of a hot hatch. With all those numbers and stuff after it, you have to assume it's a hot hatch.
You gotta, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it was the Mise if you're French. Because that's how you say that.
I guess it's got kind of the hot version. It's also styled by Pininfarina, which, all right.
Cool. Didn't do much.
Cool. It's got hydro pneumatic suspension. I think there's a couple of interesting things going on with this.
It's got an all aluminum engine. Yeah, okay. It's a unique one, and this one definitely got classic status. Presumably, it's rare and it's interesting. It's not really beautiful, but I think it gets
it's really quite boring and ugly.
Yeah, it's a 90s 80s Peugeot.
Peugeot.
I'm American. That's how I say it.
Yes. At least you don't say Peugeot. There's certainly not an R in that word.
No, unless you. It's not there.
The Subaru Impreza Turbo.
And this one they call it a Croc, and I think it's because they're in the wrong country. Because here, that is definitely a classic.
Yeah, you think so?
Oh yeah, they're rare here and they're interesting. Again, it's a they're not bad looking. I always like that body style, but they're not beautiful. But rare and interesting for sure.
All right. I guess there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, in the UK, I guess that's. I mean, it makes a lot more sense. I think they weren't importing that version at the time.
And then the last one is the one that I had questions with or disagreed with.
Yeah.
Is the Ford Fiesta RS 1800. What? How is that not a classic?
I don't know.
Instant classic.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so they call that one a crock as well. But really the point of this wasn't to talk about crock or classic. It was to go back, Jeff. And I've realized that I asked you to think of what you thought was the coolest car name, but I don't remember. Hammond said of the Peugeot 405 Mi16 that it has the coolest car name ever. Which it doesn't.
No, I mean, it is a name, but...
Mi16, he says it sounds like a gun, but almost. So, what do you think is the coolest car name?
I'm gonna go with the AMG Hammer.
The Hammer?
I love the Hammer. It's just like, I don't know, just like blunt force.
All right. So, I think my coolest car name ever, something they bring up much later in the series, is the Jensen Interceptor.
That is a good one.
Loved that car name. Another one I like, oddly enough, is the Brat. I think it just fits the car perfectly. I think it's a great name for that particular car. Overall, not a great name, like in general, but it's like if you ever met someone and their name is like Rupert, and you're like, oh yeah, you look like a Rupert,
Yeah.
Someone just looks like the name. The Brat looks like a name, but the Interceptor's probably my favorite. Great name.
Interceptor's good. I would say,
great car too. I love the way that car looks.
oh god, it's pretty. I'm a fan of De Tomaso's naming. I like the Pantera and I like the Mangusta. Those are both
Mangusta.
Mangusta's really good.
Yeah.
It's also a cool car.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hammer. I'm sticking with Hammer, man. All right, should we move into our question mark power lap?
Question mark power lap. Air quotes power lap. Yes, we should.
All right. It's not a terrible car. It is a couple notable improvements on it since I believe they had it last time because they've had it on at least once before.
They talked to the Weakest Link lady about it.
Yes, yeah. That lady, whose name I do not recall.
She's the Weakest Link lady because I don't remember either.
Okay, all right. But they have, this one is the, I think they have talked about the DSG before. The, I can't remember what that stands for, but it's a dual clutch transmission, basically. It could shift in 0.02 seconds. And that is on this model, and they also upgraded the engine. It was a 1.8T, and now it is a 3.2 liter V6, naturally aspirated.
Same one out of the Golf R32.
Exactly. Now this one comes, they didn't mention it, it comes default with all-wheel drive, so that certainly helped.
For sure.
But
I kind of assumed all Audis came with default all-wheel drive, but I guess not.
I don't think the 1.8 liter TTs were rear-wheel.
Rear.
Rear drive. This one cost about 30,000 pounds, and it's an Audi TT, and now they're all over the place, so I don't have a lot more to say about it.
Well, I mean, the gist of Jeremy's review on this one was that it is another one of those achingly fashionable cars. I guess I'm talking about this because the one thing I have written down is Jeremy said green and blue should not be seen without a color in between, which sounds like a thing that
it totally is a thing.
It totally is a thing.
Yeah, he had the extended like getting ready segment was kind of I admit I tuned out a little bit there. I mean, I get what he's looking at. I get what he's saying. That it's just stylish. It's just for getting out of, not necessarily driving. But it's a power lap. So what do we do?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about it real quickly. It is our power lap, which means the Stig put it round the track. Jeff had mentioned that it cost $30K, which is good. But what he didn't mention is that it was very dry and it did a 132.7, which is okay.
It's all right. I mean, it's not slow, but it's not anywhere near like sports car fast.
No, it's one of the slower ones we've had, and this, I guess, to be expected. It's not a race car. It's not a supercar. No. It's an Audi TT.
Yep.
So we need to put some desirability rankings out of 10. Jeff, I am going to give this version of the TT The newer versions of the TT, I think, are much nicer.
Oh, yes.
This version, I've always hated the bubble design and it just looks like someone's like, yeah, round things aerodynamic, so they just made everything perfectly round and circular.
Somebody disagreed completely with William Towns, who designed the Lagonda.
William Towns, that's who it was. I forgot it. Yeah, it's like the Lagonda is just flat and straight, and this one's like, let's just not do a Lagonda. But I've always hated the way this looks. I guess it's better upgraded engine, so the other version I would have given lower, but I'm only going to give this a 3. I don't really like it.
Yeah, I'm not far off. I'm going to give it a 4 because I think it would be a fun little... I mean, they're getting to the point where they're probably cheap enough that it'd be fun to own, but I just still don't really have much of a desire to do so.
Yeah, so that gives it a 96.25 on the Top Gear Rearview Power Rankings. Below 100, not that great. That makes it 34th out of 46. But it's just behind the BMW Z4 and just ahead of the Volvo S60R. So, kind of similar company, really.
Yeah.
Nothing egregiously slow or egregiously expensive, just kind of ho-hum.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you that this car, the newer versions, I am much more attracted to, especially the RS. The current RS is kind of a monster. It's a 400 horsepower car. So it's like this one was putting down 247, so it's, approaching doubling that.
Yeah. It's a bit much.
Yeah. So should we get on to our real challenge of the episode?
This is the whole point of this episode, really.
Yeah, and honestly, the best part. The rest of it was... The 280 was nice, the rest was kind of... And you get a laugh at a Lagonda, but the Generation game was actually really good.
So, I guess they started off with the old SL, and then they went to the, new Micra, and then the old Lagonda, and then the new TT. So they kind of had this old versus new thing going on.
Yeah, half and half.
And so it came to a head with Jeremy and Richard going face-to-face in an old versus new drag race-a-thon.
Race-a-thon. They did a 5th mile drag race, which is an interesting length, but okay.
Because
that's what they had, apparently.
So, yeah, they took a new version and an old version of the same car, if it existed, or a similar typed car.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did a pretty good job, except for the Fords. They did a Focus RS versus an Escort Cosworth, so because neither of those existed then or before. But yeah, they had 5 sets of cars, and they just put them head-to-head, just straight-up drag race. Whoever wins the most is better. So, I guess we'll start with the first one, Jeff. You give us that first one.
So the first one was was the GTI, and I think I've said before I'm a sucker for the old GTI, and this was at the time of the Mark IV, GTI and Jetta. So not the greatest looking car, but
no.
Yeah, the Mark IV was kind of a porker too before they got a lot of power into it. So unsurprisingly, the Mark I spanked it.
It really did. It was not very close, and it looks a lot better, and it's certainly like if you did a Crocker Classic. The Mark IV GTI is a crock, but the Mark I is obviously a classic.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a better car, and it's everyone agrees.
Yeah, when they did the R32, they had some stats. If I remember right, the Mark IV was roughly twice the weight of the Mark I. And that version might have been twice the power. They did not have an R32 doing the race. It was definitely just the GTI, which I think is kind of fair. Model versus model. So, unsurprising win.
All right, so that's 1 for the old cars. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The next one was 2 different Toyota MR2s. I guess one of the last MR2s that Toyota produced.
Yep.
And then what you would think of, at least what I think of, as a classic, early 80s, mid 80s MR2.
Yeah, this was the Mark I versus Mark III.
Yep. The drag race on this one was similarly not very close, but in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
The old MR2 had no chance against the new one.
I prefer the one between these two. The Mark II is my favorite of the MR2s.
Oh yeah, so they didn't have your favorite looking one?
No, I don't hate the Mark III, and I heard they're actually pretty fun to drive, just hard to work on.
Yeah, because it's a mid-engine small car
that hides behind everything.
Yeah.
Take the body off. So our third one, and Brady's favorite, I think, he had some I think we both had some issues with how this one went, but was the Fords, and it was the Escort Cosworth versus the Focus RS.
Before we tell you the winner, which one of these would you rather have?
Oh God, I want an Escort Cosworth.
Oh my God, it looks so good, right? I love the spoiler on the back.
It's
I love it all.
unbelievable.
So yes, I have some qualms with this one. I guess we should have mentioned it looked like the Stig was driving the old car in every race, and some other person was driving the new car.
Sandbagger.
Sandbagger. So this particular race, I noticed it extremely obviously. It was extremely obvious that the Escort Cosworth got an unbelievably better start than the Focus RS.
Like comically so.
Like the Focus RS just sat there for like a few seconds. It's like he almost stalled it. And
the only thing I can think of, because if I recall right, that's a turbo engine, is he just bogged the hell out of it. Or sandbagged it.
Yeah, it was either one of the two. He either really didn't know how to take off in a turbo, or is sandbagging it, because the Cosworth gets off the line and then just destroys it.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a lot closer race if the starts were more equal.
Yeah.
But in that case, Jeff, the Cosworth won.
Yes. Yeah. Unsurprisingly, I think.
Mm-hmm. Our next one is a Peugeot battle. It is the 205 GTI versus the 206 GTI. Peugeot, instead of revamping the same name when they come out with a new one, they just put a number on the end, so it went 201, 202, 203, 204, 205. And this is the 205 versus 206. This one was a little closer, I think, but the 206, the new one, won. So at the end of this race, we had 2 and 2 out of 4.
Yeah.
And so it all hinged on the last one. So take it away.
So the last one is one that we kind of talked about, I think, earlier in the series, the 350Z, the current one, versus the old 300ZX. And this one, I thought I knew how it was going to go, because the 300ZX was kind of a porker. It is a twin turbo motor, but versus the 3.5 liter V6 is a very solid one in the Z. But amazingly, the old one pulled it out.
This one was an extremely close race. I think the 350 got a better start. Mm-hmm. But I think it was the twin turbos. Once they got spooled, they just had the beans coming down the home stretch.
Pole. Yeah,
at the last half of that 5th mile track.
Yeah, brainbox odd. Maybe that's why they chose it, to slightly give the edge to this. Now this one was not the tuned one that the brainbox burnout happened in. This looks like a lot more stock.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was surprised that the 300ZX took it. So that is 3-2. Of the old cars versus new cars. Old cars taking it. It was an extremely fun segment to watch. There was a lot of excitement. The crowd was really into it. I assume they knew the results beforehand, but they really didn't make it look like it. So it was a great segment to watch. I really recommend you watch them. And as this brings us to the end of our episode here today, thank you for listening. You can always catch these episodes on Amazon. I think they have all the seasons from 2 to 24. 2 through 17 are free on Prime if you want to check those out and follow along with us. It's a great way to keep up to speed. If you want a slightly different way to listen to this, if YouTube is better for you, we do have a YouTube channel where Brady puts up our episodes basically every Friday. So same kind of release time. That is just, you can find us on YouTube by searching Top Gear Rearview. And we have a Facebook page as well where we share articles, links, pictures of hilarious cars like Aston Martin Lagonda shooting brakes we find. So check that out as well. I believe that's just facebook.com/Top Gear Rearview. Jeff says basically every Friday for the YouTube videos. It's a nice way to say I forget sometimes. Sometimes he forgets, but that's all right. That happens to the best of us. So on that note, we will see you all back here next week for the finale of Series 3.